Foreplay. Don't get ideas. Don't get ideas, you cheeky lot. Foreplay by ISD Global is a podcast where Bangalore stops whining and Bangalore starts winning. Because nobody is going to come to the city and say, here's where some cheese to go with your wine. I'm Suresh Dhanakaran, provocateur in chief, and this podcast is all about trying to make our city sassier, smarter, and sans potholes. Well, that might be pushing it a bit. So no victim cards, we've gone paperless, no blame games, just bold ideas, body, banter, and a Bangalore that we can always, all of us can be bragging about. And this is being podcast from the suave, sophisticated, elegant presidential suite of the Four Seasons Embassy 1 Bengaluru. So ready to play. Bangalore deserves far more than passive admiration. We've admired its filter coffee, its microbreweries, the Silicon Valley tag, etc., etc. But now Bangalore deserves action and attention. So together, let's foreplay. Hello there, and welcome to Foreplay, a podcast engineered by ISD Global. Today we have a very, very powerful special guest with us, and we are fortunate to have him on board. Welcome to Foreplay, Rishi. Thank you for doing this for us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Lovely, lovely. And coming on a Saturday all the way from where you have, really, really grateful. Let me begin at the beginning. So, city of Bangalore has given a lot to a lot of us, right? What is the best gift that you would have received from Bangalore? You spent more than almost 25 years, a quarter of a century. That's almost 1/4 of a lifetime. So, what is the best gift the city has given you?
I think it's provided a very conducive working environment. The kind of people you have in Bangalore whom you can reach out to for almost anything, and the kind of skills, the kind of professionalism, and the kind of warmth. So I think it's a unique combination of all of these which makes it a really nice place to work in.
Ticks multiple boxes. Huh?
Absolutely.
Since you're from that great esteemed institution, if Bangalore city would be kind of teaching a course at IIM, what would that course entail?
I think Bangalore city's story is something about a lot of very talented people coming together from different backgrounds, but with one objective, and that's really to do a lot of creative and exciting things. So what Bangalore city would, I think, teach our students is the importance of having diversity, the importance of having a whole range of different skills, people with different interests, but at the end all of them are kind of working towards their own goals, but collectively working towards something which is much more than just the individuals.
You want to say a happy collection of the heterogeneous with the homogeneous?
Yeah, you could say that, yeah.
Okay. I always wondered, citizenry is a two-way contact sport. Okay, and it is not a spectator sport.
Sure.
So I think the masses or the hoi polloi or the cognoscenti, all of us are very, very good at nitpicking, taking pot shots. System is not right, that is not right, this is not right. But I think we have an equal responsibility in terms of making things better. Okay, so how do we kind of get that? How do we get people to kind of think, listen, it is not just about what's in it for me, but it is what can we do? I don't want to sound like Kennedy, but what do you think we should be kind of doing collectively?
Well, if you look at Bangalore at the microcosm level, people are already doing things together. You see in certain localities, for example, people have come together, they've tried to keep their places clean. There was this big Whitefield Rising movement, for example, and it's happened in other parts of the city as well. For example, if you go to the Koramangala area, you see a lot of effort towards recycling waste, towards better
water conservation and
all that kind of thing. Yeah. So we have seen all of this happening in certain silos, certain locations, and I think it's getting replicated in many other areas as well, but somehow you need something to bring all of this together so that it sort of benefits the city as a whole.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think transformation, progress comes with a lot of spin-offs. There are a lot of derivatives. We all know about the positives. What is the one thing that actually kind of shakes you up a bit and you want to do a double take? What the hell has happened? One over the past 3-4 decades, which you shouldn't have, is there something that you want to kind of mull on?
Yeah, I think one thing that's happened, which is unfortunate, is that Bangalore is no longer really a city where you can walk around easily. If you look at the sidewalks, for example, it's not only that the sidewalks are uneven, there are often things projecting out. You'll suddenly have some electricity distribution system, or you'll have a telephone distribution box, or some other pole standing in the middle. So you can't really walk with confidence on the sidewalk, but Bangalore, given the weather and many other things, it's actually a place where one would love to walk around. But except for some small parts of the city, for example, Church Street, for example, where they've tried to make everything
on the weekends.
made things pedestrian friendly. But otherwise, my greatest regret is that the city doesn't promote more walking.
So, audience, if you realize that if you can't walk the talk, what is to blame and who is to blame, right? So, if you were to rate Bangalore's leadership skills, what would be the judging rubric, so to speak? Would it be CEO material or intern level hustle?
Are you referring to the city?
If city has to have leadership skills, Bangalore's leadership skills, right? Would you bracket it as CEO level material or intern level hustle?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question, but I think there have been significant efforts to enhance the quality of life in Bangalore. If you go back about 25 years, there was a Bangalore Agenda Task Force,
yes,
which was set up when S.M. Krishnan was the Chief Minister. And the objective of that was to bring in different stakeholders together. The diagnosis at that time was essentially that the problem was one of coordination, and particularly between different agencies. For example, between BBMP and BESCOM and the traffic folks and all that stuff. So the idea was, if you created a single platform where all of these agencies could come together and coordinate their work better, then Bangalore would do much better. And our own Nandan Nilekani, who has been the pioneer of so many other things in India, he was actually the chairman of the ATF. For a short while, it did do some stuff, but it really wasn't able to, I think, endure very well. There was a similar effort, I think it was called something else, it wasn't called BATF, I forgotten the name now. Rajiv Chandrasekhar headed that for a while. But all these sort of quasi-government but quasi-citizen-led initiatives to try and make the things in Bangalore better didn't really get very far. So I think it's more than just the ability to coordinate. Maybe there's some basic structural changes which need to happen in Bangalore if Bangalore is really to become the city it could certainly be.
Yeah, I think maybe just like they have in a lot of countries, that serving in the military or the army or the defense forces becomes a mandatory requirement, in terms of understanding civic sense, civic responsibilities, could also be made mandatory. I mean, just a moonshot there, Yeah, so this leads me to ask, of course, forgive me for taking this phrase from the aviation model, we call the hub and spoke.
Sure.
Okay, so Bangalore is called the academic hub, the startup hub, the innovation hub, the pub hub, and all this, amidst all these hubs, people, we did not, there was no, speaking about, parallelly do we have the urban planning and infrastructure going along. Okay, what thing caused it? Because there's so many of these things going in your favor. It should have been a natural dovetailing into kind of making sure that both, at congruence, right? What do you think? And I'm sure probably, part of it you already answered in the previous thing. But why do we, aren't we frustrated?
Well, when I first came to Bangalore, I remember reading that Bangalore was very proud of the fact that Jayanagar was the largest planned agglomeration in a city in Asia or the world or something like that. But if you look back to the planning of Jayanagar, that was somewhere in the 1970s perhaps. But what happened, I think, is essentially that the growth of the city really overtook by far the kind of planning efforts that the administration could make. To tell you from my own perspective, I first came to Bangalore in 1996. So when I moved to Bangalore in 1996, the roads were actually fairly okay. I mean, in the sense that the traffic wasn't such a serious problem at that time. I have lived almost throughout my stay in Bangalore on Bannerghatta Road, which is typically identified as one of the trouble spots as far as city traffic is concerned. But in those days, actually, the problem in Bannerghatta Road was a little different. For example, it was considered sort of outside the city, at least where IIM is. And even an auto guy, if you wanted to go and get dropped at IIM campus, he would ask for return fare because he wasn't very sure whether he would get a passenger to come back with. So that's how Bangalore was in 1996. But just a few years later, and I think the IT industry's rapid growth was partly the cause of this. Just by maybe something like early 2000s, suddenly Bangalore started exploding. And I think the whole planning process and everyone was really caught by surprise because they didn't quite expect that to happen. Let me just give you another example. So my wife joined GE's R&D center, or what is called the Jack Welch Center, in the year 2000. And this was just as this boom was about to start. In those days, it was possible to go from IIM campus to the Jack Welch Center in Whitefield in about half an hour. That's it.
Wow.
Okay. It was about 25 kilometers and you could reach in about half an hour's time. There are actually occasions on which...
You're not talking about Hyperloop, right?
No Hyperloop. This is just on the road by car. And there are occasions on which at the end of the day, I have gone from IIMB and picked up my wife from work and come back home. And we've completed this whole operation in about an hour and 15 minutes, something like that. So that's the way it was even, and this is, I'm talking about the year 2000. But this is about the time the explosion really started. And I think they just couldn't, they could never catch up with that. So even if you look at the metro, which first phase of which came up some years ago, the first phase of the metro was planned based on Bangalore's traffic patterns before the year 2000. But, you know, by the time the metro came up, it was kind of sort of in a way almost obsolete even at the time it was opened because the center of gravity of Bangalore had completely shifted. I mean, the entire IT industry was in electronic city or on the outer ring road and the metro didn't go anywhere near those places. So I think it's been this real perpetual catch-up game and no one has really managed to cut through this and find out, okay, what's the way, can we think maybe a little ahead now and anticipate what will happen, say, another 5 or 10 years down the line and plan backwards from that. Bangalore has not had that luxury and nor has anybody really been able to do that.
With due respect to what Rishi has just said, I must clarify here that for all the people, especially in Silk Board, you know, do not take umbrage. Traffic bottlenecks, you take the cake, all right? Bannerghatta comes a distant second, just to kind of pacify you, all right? Just moving on, again, since you're so well deep rooted into academics, you know, if you do a Bangalore 101 as a course at IIM Bangalore, what would be the curriculum be? And I would also like to know who would you appoint as faculty?
Well, Bangalore 101 as curriculum, I think, would have many things. I mean, one simple thing would be simply the evolution of the city. Because today Bangalore, there is no single Bangalore.
Yeah.
Today Bangalore has got all these different hubs. I mean, for example, Whitefield is almost a city unto itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the evolution of Bangalore in simple terms of spatial and temporal kind of evolution would be one very important part of that curriculum. The second thing would actually be the changing nature of work itself, because that's been very integral to the way Bangalore has changed. You can go back and think of the public sector enterprises way back in the 50s and 60s, and then you could think of the IT industry maybe starting in the 80s and 90s, and today of course there's all the startups and the all the exciting activity at the grassroots which is happening. So there are very distinct phases of evolution of Bangalore as a city. So I would imagine that's it. One would also have to spend time looking at the arts and culture and how that has evolved in Bangalore. Once again, there were very distinct hubs, maybe like Malleshwaram and so on, but now you have the cultural activities spread across the city. For example, there are a lot of other interesting things that have happened. For example, there's this whole explosion of museums which has happened. when I was a kid, I've actually come to Bangalore to see the Vishwesvaraya Technological Museum. But today, Bangalore is famous for its Indian musical experience. It
That's
has
brilliant.
MAP, it has Science Gallery, it has all these different institutions which have evolved. Another part of Bangalore which you have to be an integral part of the curriculum is the way the educational landscape has changed, both as far as higher education and school education is concerned. So, to start with, you had the Indian Institute of Science, a highly venerable institute, but then over time now you have Triple IT, you have the National Law School, because you have IIM itself, which came up about 50 years ago, plus you have all the newer private universities, many of which are doing very interesting things. So I think that's another thread I would kind of look at. Then of course there's the whole religious and cultural side of Bangalore as well, whether you go to Bull Temple Road or you go to some of the more historical parts of the city. And there's one of our former students who runs this very interesting thing called Bangalore Walks, where he actually takes people out on walking tours. And there's some wonderful historical sites in Bangalore going back to the British time, and you can literally tell the story of Bangalore going through that. So I think there are just so many different things which would have to be in the core curriculum.
Absolutely. Just going back, in case anybody thinks Bangalore 101 is a great radio FM frequency, you can apply that. Email ID is foreplay@bangalore101.com. Okay, thank you. Just coming back to all these aspects, beautiful aspects of the city that you shared, Rishi. Maybe the law of attraction is manifested itself, wherein I see that probably this could be the most cosmopolitan city in the country. Once upon a time, Bombay used to kind of take that mantle, but I suspect, this Bangalore is probably more cosmo, if not as good.
Yeah. But, Bangalore had certain starting characteristics, because if you go right back to the time when it was a British cantonment, even at that time there was a fairly good mix of people, largely from different parts of South India. So, and that continues even today. I mean, you can hear Tamil, Telugu, in addition to Kannada, very commonly in the city. And now with the influx of people from other parts of the country, you can hear almost every national language on the streets. I don't think there has been a very accurate census of the city in terms of the place of origin of people, but I'm sure if you were to do it, you would find, I would tend to agree with you, you'd probably find that Bangalore is the most widely representative place of different parts of India.
One thing, because I'm still coming to terms with the city and I love it because I met with some really interesting people. There are some great places, very progressive minded folks, etc., etc. One of the challenges that probably I'm just echoing it for a lot of other people, is that when you want to kind of negotiate auto fares, so you're also caught between rock and a hard place. Is it management principles that you use or plain begging? What works with negotiating auto fares in Bangalore?
Well, I must first confess that I don't take autos very often, so you're not probably asking the right person. But, I think auto drivers everywhere are a breed to themselves. I grew up in Chennai, where the auto driver is in many ways a character to himself, right? So, if you ask me, relatively speaking, the Bangalore auto driver is quite a nice guy. So,
compared to...
you can actually negotiate with him. And if you catch him on the right chord, most auto drivers in Bangalore can speak at least 4 or 5 languages. So it's actually possible to have a conversation as long as you're not trying to push him around.
Okay. So there is word going around, and maybe it is under the radar, and I want you to kind of reveal it to our audience, that there is a course that you all are planning called the Executive MBA in Fixing Bangalore. Okay, so can you just tell us a little bit about the curriculum that will be going into it?
In management, we often talk about things that are called wicked problems. Wicked problems are problems that are just so complex that they don't have easy solutions, and anything you touch has an impact on many other things. So I think the problem you just posed is very representative or very characteristic of a wicked problem. So because you simply don't know where to start, right? Obviously traffic is the thing we all curse the most, but I'm not sure that traffic is the place to start.
Right.
Yeah, you have a whole range of other things to look at. including civic amenities, including organizations, the governance structure. And I think one thing is quite clear, Bangalore is just a sort of extreme example of a broader challenge that India faces. And that challenge is that we don't have good models for urban governance. This was identified as a challenge many years ago, that with the rapid growth of the economy, the cities have really become the growth engines. And obviously, these growth engines need very superior governance to be able to enable them to support the kind of rapid growth and change we are seeing. So, while I would say Bangalore is a maybe extreme case of this, I would suspect similar challenges exist in other cities as well. If you just read media reports, you'll find almost every large city in India has significant challenges which are not all that different from what Bangalore has. So I think I would say the root is really in understanding the governance, understanding the structure, understanding how do you create a responsive administrative system for a modern city. And unfortunately, I don't think the Indian legal and governance system has kept pace with that at all. So I would suspect that Bangalore is not the place you need to fix. You need to fix this overall system.
Right. Yeah, I think we can go on and on about traffic and its ills and all that. But as you said, there are so many other associated, intertwined, complex issues that we need to kind of. Otherwise, we will always be separating missing the wood for the trees.
No, I think there are also basic things like development models. For example, when the Indian IT services industry started becoming very successful, say about 20 years ago, and when the first multinational R&D centers started getting set up in Bangalore, one of the big questions was, should Bangalore kind of nudge itself in a particular direction, maybe focus more on high-end innovation. If you take Silicon Valley, for example, in Silicon Valley in the US, you don't have a lot of too many low value added kind of activities happening. Silicon Valley is really focused on the cutting edge innovation, and that's how that region has grown. So I remember this debate, by the way, was quite active. Even around 2004, 2005, some people had identified that, maybe Bangalore needs to choose what kind of activities it would like to encourage here, or maybe the state government would sort of choose. And maybe there should be a conscious effort to sort of gently nudge other activities to happen in other cities in Karnataka. But unfortunately, that never happened. So you have this incredible mix of different activities.
Kind.
All these things happening in the same city. And the numbers are there for everyone to see, right? I don't know the exact number, but something like 60% of the state domestic product in Karnataka is somewhere or another related to what's happening in Bangalore and around it. That's clearly a very, very
too many eggs in one basket.
and it's a very bad distribution.
Right. We talked about in terms of attracting so much of talent and skill from all other parts of the country. What is the quirkiest thing that you've observed about Bangalore's work culture? That actually stood out for you. Brings a smile to your face, and you're always left wondering as to how and why.
I think what's really been very exciting, particularly in the last few years, is how there's just so many people with different skills, different ideas. You look at the startup hub. You look at some place like HSR Layout, Koramangala, the areas which are seen as the kind of epicenter. And the kind of folks who have got attracted literally from all over India with all their startup ideas and their enthusiasm, energy and all the rest. I don't think I can put my finger on a particular idea, but I'm just amazed by the kind of vibrancy all of this has created.
All right, okay. We'll quickly shift to something called the foreplay rapid fire. We'll get into some rapid fire foreplay questions with Rishi. And here we go. If you were given absolute power for a week, unabashed top-down power, Idi Amin power, okay, what would you change about Bangalore?
Well, I just make all the roads completely usable. What I mean by that is most roads have rubble, they have potholes, they often don't have they don't use the entire width of the road. So I think one of the basic solutions to the traffic problem of Bangalore, which will give you at least 20 to 25% better throughput, is simply making sure that whatever road exists is usable.
Effectively, 100 feet road is what is available is only about 60 or 65,
Yeah, that's it.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we will want to take the road less travel is what Rishi is encouraging all of us to do, which is what all of us should do in any case. Okay, it is not a metaphor; it is a sagely advice which we must follow. So the next one, Rishi, Silicon Valley. I don't want to put you between a rock and a hard place. Is it? Do we think we should suffer from some imposter syndrome here?
I don't think there is any imposter syndrome. I think Bangalore is the hub of ideas for India, in India, sometimes for the world, but even coming up with good ideas for India is good.
Yeah, okay. So, no, I think from a point of view of, I was connecting it with all the other things around it, not from a point of view of the cerebral, intellectual, IP point of view. So, when you are positioning yourself as the Silicon Valley of India or Asia, there are lots of other associated things that we take for granted should be in place. It could have been Silicon Valley raised to 5, right? Had the other things been there, because we have the best of minds and talents and intent and energies.
In
and
fact,
all this happening despite.
Yeah. So I think you put your finger on it. That in a way is the tragedy of Bangalore. That Bangalore could be almost paradise on earth, if only.
So near yet so far.
Yeah.
So if Bangalore were to be a brand, what would be your tagline for it? Assuming it's a product brand, service brand, whatever brand, what would be a tagline for it?
We are the center of all ideas. Something like that. Maybe I'm not putting it well, but...
Okay, that's a nice one. We can remove we are the center of all ideas.
Yeah, something like that.
Give it that thing. Like, nice. Please remember, the center of all ideas. One more thing, probably it's all circling back to the same thing. Please forgive me for that. Do you think we have too much of an adjustment culture wherein we take the huge deficiencies in infrastructure and other associated things, and we kind of probably wield the megaphone saying it is resilience or tenacity, whereas we need to be kind of looking the evil in the eye and calling it out, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I don't know if you remember this incident many years ago now, must be about 20 years ago, when the companies who were in Electronic City came out to do this protest that the access to Electronic City was not good. And even the top leaders of IT industry, I think even Narayan Murthy and others actually came out and did a protest on Hosur Road. That really galvanized the government into action. And finally, what is today the elevated road to Electronic City got built, largely triggered by that. I mean, it might have already been in the planning book, but they really expedited it because they didn't want those guys out on the streets.
Moral of the story is elevation via revolution. There has to be some kind of a revolt. Right?
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of anger or frustration which will kind of galvanize people into action.
Yeah, and particularly if you have some big names, big brands, people who are in the public eye, if they're sort of also seen as associating with that, that makes a big difference.
Okay. Bangalore's food scene, I love it. Just asking you, do you think it's right, overrated, underrated?
Sorry, I didn't get the
Bangalore's
question.
Food scene.
I think food scene in Bangalore is actually quite good, I would say. You have almost all cuisines. You have several new outlets opening all the time. I think it's, I would say it's right up there.
So the future assets of our city, future assets of our country, what is the message that you want to send out, in terms of looking at uncertainty as an opportunity, impediments as something which is probably the stepping stone, or we shy away from. What is the kind of resilience that you want them to build over time as they come out of their campuses and schools and colleges?
And I think, as you said earlier, resilience is good, but you don't want to carry resilience too far.
Yeah.
You also have to push hard to get improvement done, and sometimes too much resilience allows the status quo to sort of in a way continue. So I would argue you need to get that balance right.
Right, right. Okay, okay. One final question. You are sending a message out to the Bangalore 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
What is the message? What is the message you would like to send out?
To the Bangalore of 20 years from now, I would probably send a message saying, we're really sorry, we should have done much more to get the foundation of this city sorted out so that, your city would have been much better at that time.
Yeah, probably most parents would be telling that to their children as well, and I think it's a domino loop that we'll go into. Thank you so much. Why don't you ask me some questions as well? I'm feeling left out.
So, what do you think is the number one thing you would do? I mean, you asked me that question, right? You had this, you said IIM type powers. So, what would you do?
So I think the endeavor that I would want to embark on would be in terms of how do we get the power of the community, because it's the responsibility bias is a collective effort.
Sure.
Okay, it cannot be the easy thing of pointing fingers and finding faults, and the easiest thing sitting on the fence and not doing anything. But I think so if I had that kind of unabashed, unadulterated power, I would actually want to galvanize the community and say that listen, nothing comes. There has to be a revolt.
Yeah.
Obviously, backed by there is what you are asking for is elementary, rudimentary, fundamental.
Yeah.
Probably it is your rights, and if you're not getting that, and if you're looking over onto the other side, you deserve what you're getting, right? So that is what I would actually like to do.
Yeah, but I think the interesting part is there are lots of, in a way, local leaders, and here I'm putting the leaders in quotes, who have tried to do things in Bangalore in the past, and somehow we need to empower them more. You just go back to Ramesh Ramanathan and Janagraha. Again, it's almost more than 20 years ago that he started this whole movement trying to make the corporation's budget more visible to people, trying to get people to take more active participation in their wards so that at the local level there would be more pressure to get things done. Or you fast forward, today there is Padmashri in Koramangala who is driving this entire Madiwala market, making it more sustainable, working with BBMP to kind of get the whole place sort of more into the circular economy, making sure that all waste gets processed and all. There are these individual champions and even some groups in different parts of Bangalore who have had a lot of ideas, they've had incredible tenacity, they've tried to really push some things, but somehow the rest of the city has not really sort of worked with them to take those to a larger scale.
Yeah, I think you're dead right, because as Steve Jobs would have put it, we need to connect all this unconnected dots moving forward, so that all this, because there are lots of people, as you rightly said, doing some wonderful work, but operating isolated, operating in silos. So the collective force is not coming, and it's not tangible enough, I guess. So I think if there is a movement that can kind of bring about and bring all these people together, and we want to give it a best shot in terms of trying to be that, I think we could achieve far better, far more, far faster. Okay. Thank you so much, Rishi. This was a great conversation. Thank you for doing this for us.
Yeah, wonderful. And really happy to be part of this, and I hope all of this finally culminates in some more energy to help Bangalore become, even much better than it is today.
Yeah, because I think Bangalore deserves far more than, passive admiration. Okay, we love our filter coffees, we love our microbreweries, but I think, for the Bangalore city, that the potential, as you mentioned some time back, for it to realize its true potential, it is a ground up meeting top down kind of exercise. It cannot be one way, it cannot be a spectator sport. I think it has got to be a contact sport, and we need to take responsibility. Thank you for doing this, Rishi. Thank you. It's wonderful to have you.
Really good to be here. Thank you.